Welcome everyone. My name's Jon Myer and I'm also known as the AWS Blogger. And recently I left AWS about 3 weeks ago. And before I tell everybody where I landed or my career has taken me, I'd like to introduce a good friend, mentor, AWS VP, Chief of Evangelist, Jeff Barr. Jeff, welcome.
Great to be back again with you, John.
Yeah, Jeff, I love it that you do these with me. I love it that we get a chance to sit down and talk about everything. And I do have to give credit to you. Last year, my career changed and took a whole new path. And I have to, and the pandemic caused it. And what came out of it was you and I doing these events and shows together, these recordings. So you really have become like a good friend and an awesome mentor onto my next career.
Well, that's really interesting to hear, and I actually would love to hear the story. And I always like to tell people about you see the fork in the road. Well, it's an opportunity, and you should take it. And so, tell me all about it.
Well, all right. So let me jump into that and kind of give everybody a little bit of a backstory. Last year, the pandemic hit. Everybody was affected, and by no small means, we had to invent and do different things. Figure out a lot of things locally and how to stream and create content. And what actually was really interesting is I created an AWS meetup group here in the Lehigh Valley. And, I pinged Corey Quinn. I was like, you game? And Jeff, you were on Twitter there and said, count me in. I think I've said this, but I totally freaked out. Behind the scenes, I was sweating. I contacted my boss. I'm like, this just happened. What do I do? I mean, Jeff said, let's do this, let's jump on there. And it just happened.
Well, happy to help out then. And sorry to send you into shock, but I guess it all worked out well.
Well, Jeff, you and I had a couple of meetings beforehand. Actually, before that actually happened, we met at reInvent, and previously when I introduced myself in August the previous year, when you took me to your favorite coffee shop, we sat down for coffee for 15 minutes, and like you're my AWS idol. You're actually how I became involved in AWS and learned about so many processes. So I really appreciate it. I appreciate the time you've given me on every occasion and just the conversations we have offline.
Well, always happy to help. And, to me, there's always a really interesting lesson is sometimes you just have to ask, and you can say rank and titled and perceived importance, whatever, but just go ahead and ask. You just never know what's going to happen.
That's very true, because you take a chance. I mean, what's the worst you can say? No, I don't have any time. You're not actually like that. So when I thought about it, I'm like, okay, he's a VP, he's at an L level. I'm like, he's not going to have any time. But you responded almost immediately when I was in Seattle. You were like, yeah, let's do it.
I like to just be a regular person, and I don't put on airs, and I don't surround myself with kind of a firewall, and just always open to trying something new and to meeting new people.
And trust me, from that we had a CJ Pub Talk or CJ2 Pub Talk. There were Corey Quinn, a number of those. You involved in Deep Racer, and I created Underground Deep Racer here. You've been supported in every aspect of my self-proclaimed evangelist, efforts. And one of the things that we work on and we're utilizing today is OBS Ninja. You actually got me involved in that, and I create content for them now. I create a lot of content, and it's all on my own, just kind of providing and giving back.
It's totally fascinating to me, the community around OBS and the product itself and all the people that contribute to the code base, and then significant add-ons like OBS Ninja, and then you and the other folks that take that and then have effectively said, I will be evangelists for OBS and OBS Ninja and the code and the filters and the myriad of techniques and the extra hardware, the Stream Deck and all the cool stuff you can plug into it. It's fascinating how many different moving parts there are and how many amazing things you can do with all these pieces.
I think you captured a number of my videos, the Stream Deck, the MIDI controls, the different version releases that came out, version 17. I'm working on a video now for the version 17, a little more in depth on some of the controls that you can add to it. Steve put in an awesome effects, like basically your green screen or your background And that's a huge ad there. It's almost like utilizing Zoom and your background that you have using OBS, but it's integrated into OBS Ninja. He's done an excellent job with it.
Steve's an amazing person, and the amount of code that he's cranked out, and you really read the release notes for one version of OBS Ninja, and it looks like there was a team of people working on this for a year, but it's Steve and a month or two sometimes. It's just mind blowing how much functionality he's packed into that app.
Yeah, and I usually ping him, and I'll ping him on Discord, and I was like, hey, what's new? What's coming up? When's the next version? And he wants to do a video almost immediately, and I'll be like, all right, let's do it tomorrow. Send me the version notes. And we do it totally off the cuff. We go through it and things, and I'm like, all right, what are your main points that you want to talk about that we can capture for everybody in 15 or 20 minutes? And we just pump it out for them.
It's also fascinating to watch Steve interact with his community on Reddit. There's an entire OBS subreddit, and people ask really interesting questions of how can I do this, or why does it work this way? Steve has a wealth of knowledge about what's already there. And if he reads the question and he says, well, this is a really interesting growth area for the product, he won't hesitate to code it up and say, okay, here's the next version and try out this special magic URL. He's very patient. He's very welcoming and receptive to new folks, but he gives great answers. And sometimes they'll say, oh, it should be amazing if it did this other thing that's way, way out in left field. And Steve's like, oh, you know what? I just cooked up something brand new just for you. It's experimental, but try it out and let me know what you think. And it's pretty stunning to see the community he's built around that.
He's, now that I think about it, he kind of reminds me of you and just the aspect. I mean, I reached out to him. This guy who developed OBS Ninja, by the way, is completely free, and he does it on his own time. But he's not like I'm a big shot. He's so down to earth that you can reach out and talk to him. Hey, I got this issue. Well, or let me understand the use case for it. And I absolutely love the product. Thanks, Steve, for creating it. If you didn't, I would not be creating content or doing live stream events today. It would be too difficult.
I'm at the point where I've done some practice. I haven't done this live yet, but it's pretty clear that I can do a multi-camera setup in my home office, and I can use an expensive camera, a couple cell phones, maybe a webcam. I can pull it all together with Ninja and really do something that would be almost studio quality as far as the ability to switch between cameras and scenes really easily. And it doesn't take all that long to set up. There's a little bit of a learning curve, but it's only because these tools are so powerful that you need to just look at it and say, there's 100 things it could do, and I'm going to pick the 3 for my first shot at it just to make sure that I'm going to be a success here.
I agree, because I actually have a Blackmagic for mine. Now, you don't have to go out and buy one, but for my multi-camera setup, I have a Blackmagic on my desk, and I use for AWS Deep Racer Underground, and I had that multi-camera view for reInvent, and that's how I was switching them using that. So that's definitely one you can use, or within the tool itself, you can click and change the camera view automatically, and it'll switch to another one.
So one thing I found really fascinating is I recently, well, maybe last year, I got a new Dell PC, and it had this feature. I didn't realize how useful it was at the time, but it actually has this neat thing where I can put a little app on my phone, and I can control my phone from my PC, which means that after I put my phone into a tripod and it's facing forward, so I'm using the best camera, I don't have to somehow reach around the tripod and try to click on small buttons to adjust OBS Ninja. I can just pull it up on my PC over here and essentially remote login to my remote desktop to my phone. And it seems to be part of being successful with this is the plug and play philosophy. If you think back to the way that Unix was a success originally, it wasn't that Unix was this one all-encompassing operating system that was monolithic and all the pieces were just pre-built and did have all these options. It was, here's a bunch of really small, individually useful tools, and here's the command line, and here's pipes to connect them all together. And I look at the entire just ensemble of things you can do with OBS and OBS Ninja and Stream Deck and filters and cameras, and you have to have that mentality that says, there isn't a solution out there. I just need to bolt all these things together in the best possible way to actually build that solution for myself.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned it there with your Dell and your phone app. I think you were talking to me the one day, and I think you were at your vacation home, and you had to get out. You didn't want to get everything else, so you just grabbed your phone and you hooked up to OBS Ninja, and you did everything directly from your phone, and nobody would have known anything different.
Exactly, and the reality is I've got a brand new phone that I think its camera might be a little bit higher quality than the really expensive one that I'm looking into right now.
I'm pretty sure of that. So Jeff, I really want to jump into a couple of things. And before I kind of tell everybody where my career has taken me, because I haven't given you even a hint on where I'm going yet or where I started. So I wanted to keep that as a surprise. Staying on topic about some of the things and recording events, May 3rd, you released AWS What's New. And I usually click on yours and I listen to it in the background, and I clicked on it and I found myself listening and watching the entire time. Your story that you did captivated me when you were, the main part of the story was actually speaking up to somebody who created a professor who had more knowledge, and he had all these degrees on it. And the part that I want to talk about when I get there, I'm going to let you jump in here, would be the elevator part. But do you want to just give everybody a little bit of background on why you started adding these stories and how well they're doing for you?
Sure. So first, thanks for watching. It's always great to have an audience for the work that I do. For the last couple of years, I've been recording What's New with AWS videos, and we started doing them in the studio. And in the studio, it's a fairly intimidating place, even when you're familiar with it, because there's a lot of people looking at you. There's a ton of equipment. There's lights and cameras, and ultimately, every eyeball and every piece of equipment in the place is actually just pointed directly at you. And so I did a number of What's New videos in the studio, and I never thought I got very good at it. I had to do a bunch of takes, and we experimented with a bunch of different ways to do teleprompting. And then pandemic hit, we're working from home. A month or two in, I started to miss creating the videos, and we got some customer requests of, hey, what happened to What's New? I messaged the video team and said, what can we do from home? And they said, we got you covered, Jeff. They sent me a tripod and a camera and a microphone, and we started figuring out different ways to record from home. We mastered all of that, and we slowly added more tech. And then we said, what can we do to take this to the next level? And what can we do to make it even more interesting? Because we were pretty encouraged by the feedback that the from homes were getting. And a lot of people said, just give us some interesting perspective into who you are, Jeff. Like, give us some stories from your career. You've done a lot of interesting things over the last 40 plus years. And so they were very kind. The video crew actually found a coach to work with me. And we've really put a lot of energy into finding these stories and then iterating on the stories to really polish them. And it turns out when you start looking into stories and into movies that there's always the same hero's journey, and learning about the hero's journey and how you get launched on a quest as the hero, and then things start to go bad and you kind of get into a bit of trouble, and the bad guys are kind of closing in on you, and then you kind of hit bottom, and it's like, oh my gosh, all is lost, and how am I going to get out of this? And then the magic appears, and you kind of see your way forward, and then you're like, you get past whatever is that challenge. It's been, once you know those four basic things, you see them in every story, which is absolutely fascinating. And working with my coach, we've really put a lot of energy into not just finding the story, but while keeping it as true to life as possible, making sure to make it into a really awesome story to share with my audiences.
So I have to tell you that I actually started working with your coach. You recommended him. I reached out to him. I had one conversation with him, and I felt myself, when you're in a meeting, if it's not that engaging, you're kind of zoning off. I was intent watching and listening to him talk. I was writing down notes. I was like, what's my homework for tonight? What am I going to do? And when he explained some of the parts of the story, and he goes, every single movie and thing, 9 times out of 10 follows the same format. And when they were explaining it, I started looking at all these movies I've watched, and I'm like, I can pick out those points. And that was my homework assignment, by the way, is to just watch a movie and pick out each of those parts. But I felt myself really engaged, and that's what I'd like to. The story you told on the 3rd, with regards to it, the one part that sticks out to me is you're at the elevator, and you really captured the scent and the smell coming up, and the elevator doors weren't even open yet. And I found myself not standing next to you. I found myself as you standing there. Ooh. Waiting, emotionally waiting for these doors to open. And I'm like, oh, please don't open. The smell, don't come out at me. And that's when I reached out to you, and I was like, Jeff, your story got me. I mean, that was really inspiring, but I felt it, that it put me into the scene.
That's really good to hear. And I'll give a lot of credit to our coach, because storytelling doesn't come naturally. Like, supposedly we as human beings and proto-humans, we were telling stories when we were actually back in caves, but it still takes a lot of energy to just identify the vital parts of the story, and then decide how you'd like to tell them, and then sand off all the rough edges that you don't really need, decide what you really want to accentuate. And then as you're telling it, like deciding what should be loud and what should be fast, and then like what should just be quiet. Like, we're, as human beings, we're almost too good at wanting to fill empty time with some words, and sometimes just the pause. And I've noticed in some shows I watch, like if you can like pause for a few seconds for comedic effect, and you're just like standing there, and everybody's watching and waiting for the punchline or for your reaction. It's incredibly difficult to hold your composure for that pause, because you just want to keep on talking. But there's so much we can learn, I think, to be better storytellers and to hold audiences. And the one you mentioned about the elevator, it was really fun to think back and think, okay, well, I'm outside this elevator, and suddenly it's like, oh, I can smell this just nasty pipe from here. And let's see, how did I describe it? It was
about a whale, I think.
A whale on the beach, plus a durian, plus kerosene, I think was the notes, I guess we would say, if this was a fine wine. The fine elements of a rotting whale carcass.
I pictured it. I think, and not to be fully descriptive, I think I had like the taste there too, and I'm like, oh man, that's just rough.
I guess I succeeded then.
You did. Well, and that's what inspired me to reach out. I'm like, Jeff, that was awesome. And you said you've been working with a coach, and I asked for I'm like, any way you can recommend, because I would love to get to that level. And that's something that I think I inspire, to tell a story like that. But I watched the time. You had 2 service releases, by the way, 2 announcements, 7 minutes of the segment. I think it was like 16. 7 minutes was a story. But I hung around for the entire time, because I was like, what is he going to say next?
Okay, that is great to hear. And the learning on this has been absolutely fascinating for me. For years, I think we believed that we needed to just intro and 3 quick launches and thanks for watching and we'll see you again soon. And we tried to just compress those into really just a few minutes. And then as you start to unspool these stories, you need to set them up, and you need to go through all the parts, and you need to add all the relevant details. The last video, I think, was close to 15 minutes long, and to my absolute surprise, I think it's one of the better performing ones that we've done. And so all of this about incredibly short form content and lack of attention span, and everybody just wants 15-second TikToks. Certainly there's a place for all of those, but if you can capture someone's attention and keep them watching for the story and for the payoff of the story, they actually will. And that was a really good thing to learn, that we just learned within the last 2 months.
Jeff, I also have to credit, it's also your personality too. Great storytelling. Everybody loves you. Listen to you. They look for what is Jeff doing next? I think you have more followers than anybody at Amazon or AWS. because of how you come across as that personal person. And when you tell those stories, everybody is captured by you, and they want to know the personal Jeff, because and that's where they get to know it. And I think that's where you're drawing them in. So I definitely inspire to be able to tell a story like that and capture the audience. I'm not worried about the followers. I'm worried about the engagement and how they feel afterwards, that they feel really compelled to watch, and everything else will come. So it was really good. And I'll tell you what, from then on, I've been listening really for those stories. Don't get me wrong, AWS has great services. I mean, I love it. Hey, what's new if you're watching? Great, let them keep doing it. But the stories are cool to listen to.
Well, I love that great feedback and super appreciate it. I'm totally worried now that I'm going to run out of stories. Like I've got a doc, and I'm tracking stories. And you'd think for being 60 years old, I'd have had more of those stories than I do. But I'm going to have to like think harder and kind of refresh myself back into older times. And the fun thing about telling these stories is I'll generally start my prep on a Monday morning, and I've put a little grid together for myself, so I remind myself of the essential elements. I fill that in. I do a quick rehearsal with our coach to get things going. I get a lot of feedback. I take notes there. But then simply by having put that initial story together, there's these just long dormant memories that are just off in my brain's equivalent of just Glacier deep archive storage. These long, almost lost memories start to come back, and it's really fun. Like as I'm telling these stories, I am actually back there, and I'm like, I am at that elevator, or I've got one I just published yesterday about working in my first job at a computer store. And you can listen to that one to find out more about that. But it's only been out for 24 hours, and we're already at like just about 2,000 views. So I must be doing something right.
I have to tell you, I got a little insight into that story, by the way, from our coach, who was capturing me from your story. So you might not think about it. Was doing an excellent job capturing your story. And I'm like, I'm listening. And he's like, there's a story to be told. So I hope you don't mind him sharing a little insight in that. I was captured. So you might, if you run out of a story for that week, you can always tell somebody else's story that you helped along the way or you worked with. Maybe one day I'll become one of your stories.
Yeah. Now, one thing that we are focusing on, as I've told a lot of stories about things that have worked out really well in the end, and I've been a little bit shy to talk about situations where I've just fallen flat on my face, and like you learn things about doing that as well. And so the story I'm working on for this week is like being an actual like failure at something. And the funny thing is, I figured out that something that happened to me actually probably in like third grade was the actual cause of the failure of this. And it was like the most bizarre set of events that I will just have to leave you hanging, so you have to watch the video.
Oh, I know. Spoiler. Well, not spoiler alert. A little hint. You got to wait for this. Watch it. It's coming out, what, next Monday?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to talk about real quick, jumping into it. Last week, you did a what's new on a couple of things. It just so happened to coincide with my vacation and my birthday last Monday. So I took some vacation time off, celebrated my birthday with the family on a nice island, got some sun, and hit the ground running. But you did talk about the AWS Certified Specialty Exam. That was one of your hot topics. Yes. Jeff, I got to tell you, I did not pass the first time around when I took that. That is a very challenging exam, but it got you to think in ways that how security works and where does the ultimate security lie.
Yeah, one thing I love about this book is it spans services. You know, we create a lot of good content at AWS, but by the nature of the content that we create, it's often about a particular service and a particular way to use a single service. And this book, and there's another one I talked about recently about machine learning, they have the ability to step back a bit and say, yes, we're going to talk about individual services, but let's kind of give you a slightly bigger picture and show you how these services fit together and how you can get value out of them individually, but how you can put them together and get even more value and do some even cooler things.
Nice. So that would, are you recommending a book on what's new? It seems to be a recurring theme here at the end of it.
I think that I recommended one a couple months ago, and I got a good response to that from the audience, and I got a good like a good note from the author thanking me for doing that. And so now I get a fairly constant stream of requests from other aspiring authors that say we're getting ready to publish, and I'd love it if you take a look at my book, and if you like it, to give it a quick mention on the what's new.
Nice. Well, we did want a recording, Working Backwards. That was that was one of the books that you had a chance to read ahead of time. It was by by a previous manager that did it?
Yeah, Colin Breyer was one of my first managers at AWS, and so Colin and Bill Campbell together wrote this great book called Working Backward.
So I did have a chance to get that book, but another book that I want to throw out is I actually have over here, and I enjoy this. If you ever see this on LinkedIn here, The Fact of the Day, it's a very interesting read, and you go through it, and it's not all about like AWS publishing, but a lot of the features every day. And I'm not throwing it out there as a recommendation because I have no near clout as Jeff has for book recommendations, but this is one that I've picked up, and I actually like to pick it. You can pull a page out and just read the page and what it's about, and it's really interesting and inspiring.
There's definitely room for that very short form content where you might really have 90 seconds and you want to just learn one really new thing, and maybe just flip to a random page and just say, okay, let me just see what interesting thing just pops up here.
Once again, it's one of those things I can grab it when I come down in the morning with my coffee and take a look at it, read it, and be like, interesting. That kind of makes sense. And if I got more time, flip another page.
Yeah. So that was actually the AWS fact of the day? Is that the title?
It says the fact of the day, and it actually follows all of Amazon's stuff. I have a couple of recommendations here back from even Amazon Prime, AWS FileEdge, Director, Product, and Amazon Lockers in here. It has Jeff Bezos' shareholders in here, all his emails. By the way, his letters, just read it. They're very short and they're perfect. They're, why say, 100 words when you can say 25 to complete it very. So
I think one of the things that we really learn at Amazon is just the value of high quality written communication is the thing we learn. And then we also learn just how hard it is to be a high quality written communicator.
Yes. I've learned a lot at Amazon. Speaking of, I learned what I was at Amazon. Yes, I did recently leave AWS, but don't worry. I loved everybody I was working with there. A change of career here. I'm working on, and I actually have, thanks to Jeff and inspiring his story back there on May 3rd, I put together a small podcast series talking about my journey to AWS. And I literally worked backwards. I started at, I kind of started at the beginning, why I wanted to work at AWS or Amazon. And I talked about my journey. I'm going to release it here. Check out social media. Jeff, I'd like to send it to you because your story inspired me to talk about my story and really kind of dive deep on a lot of things.
I'd love to listen to it.
Yep, I will definitely share it. Now, I know everybody, you're not hanging on for me to tell you where I'm landing. I haven't even told Jeff, but before we get there.
I'm hanging on.
See, I did not tell Jeff. I wanted his natural reaction to it. Before we get to that one, Jeff, your latest what's new that happened, you had a nice story in the beginning. In fact, I only listened to the story. I didn't even get to the products and services. Which, you were talking about your first computer book. Everybody in your family was very amazed that you could read you were reading during this time of the divorce between your parents. And that's a tough topic to talk about live to everybody and share these personal things. So anybody going through it, you can actually resonate and sit there with Jeff and kind of feel the same thing that he's going through.
It was a thing that I wasn't sure that I was going to be okay to share. And I just want to really be honest, like at the point when I was at that store, like there was no other really good thing happening in my life. Like there was just uncertainty at home, and there was no perspective on what's happening with my parents and why everything is just so disruptive. And we've in the course of 4 years, we moved from Boston to Seattle. We have 2 different houses in Seattle. Then we move on to Maryland. And honestly, being anchored in tech and being able to like dive deep in tech and do something that was I could learn and I could be useful there was the thing that kept me going during that time.
That was your out, whatever kind of kept you connected to everything. And, at that time you were talking about, I know you were going back to the Intel days and the processors, and you were very intrigued by it, and you kind of dived deep into those. And I know I used another Amazonian term there, diving deep. I tell you what, AWS is ingrained in a lot of things. They do so many interesting things that they make and I'm taking that to my new company and my new career and following some of those. So that's a lot of value.
It really is. And I think this is one of the things that ends up spreading nicely as people have a career that has a stop at Amazon, is you learn a lot of really good lessons, some of which are embodied in our leadership principles. And then you take those with you, and the ones that worked for you, you say, you know what, this is a good enough practice that I'll continue to do it at my next step in my journey.
Yep. Now, before I tell everybody where I landed, I have one last question for you, Jeff. What are some of the things you've been working on lately, whether it's AWS or home? Because I know you share some home stuff and some AWS, and they kind of interlock with each other.
Let's see. So I had been doing some 3D printing for a while, and then I broke my printer, and I'm waiting for a replacement part. So I haven't done any printing for like 6 weeks. I thought I could fix it and ended up not being able to fix it really well. So that's kind of mothballed for a bit. I'm actually presenting at Serverless Live tomorrow. And
I saw.
I'm presenting, and I felt really, really lame getting ready because I haven't actually, I've written about a lot of services lately, and I haven't really done anything useful and substantial with any of them. And I was kind of starting to feel like I was kind of faking things. And there's always this difference between the theory you write about and the practice of actually doing it. So I said, I'm going to actually do something real. I'm going to actually write some real code and make it work. So I've had some fun with S3 Object Lambda and getting that set up and writing a Lambda function and having it call recognition. And then I had it recognize, like actually draw rectangles around all the things it recognized in the image, and then return that, and then returning some metadata. And it was very reassuring to figure out that with a little bit of energy and a lot of searching, I could actually make all this stuff really work. And like an actual legit qualified developer would say that's kind of trivial, but I was really happy to be able to just make it all work in the space of a long afternoon.
You posted that, didn't you? Luna was on there. Did you do a rectangle or square around her?
That was the first step, and I made a more interesting test image, and I've got that all set to go for tomorrow's Serverless Live. And I haven't quite decided if I'm ready to actually put code up on the screen and step through it. I probably will. I guess I've got it all as backups on PowerPoint if I have to, but I'm actually pretty comfortable with Lambda and Object Lambda. And I've got a test program, and I've got the CloudWatch metrics going, and I've got the traces going. And it's always interesting to talk about those neat services, but there's something that you simply can't convey by talking about them or writing about them. Like the fact that you can actually tell when your function is going to succeed because your command line returns in 2 seconds, versus you can tell when you had an error in your code and it's retrying 4 times and then it takes 8 seconds instead. Yeah. And like you can say, yes, it'll take longer, but to see that in action and gives you just a better sense of like, how does it feel to use these services? And knowing that dynamic response, I think is really worth knowing and experiencing.
100% hands-on versus theorizing that it works, where you tried it out, you came across some of the errors and the issues, and you can provide everybody with those tips. Hey, listen, when I was doing this and writing this code, yes, it's in the simplest nature, but guess what I learned along the way? And the errors, oh, it's all right. This is okay. It's going to retry and it's going to succeed. So you can't. That's really valuable for the audience, and you come across more knowledgeable on the subject.
Exactly. Or instead of just saying, oh, and by the way, construct a suitable IAM policy. It's like, okay, now you actually have to know exactly what your function is doing and what it calls, and those things are all well documented and very accessible. But you still actually have to do it.
Yep.
And doing it and just learning little bits of and gaining a bit of confidence as well was actually really good to do in the prep for Serverless Live.
Yep. Anything else before we get to the final topic?
I'm sitting here on the edge of my seat, just waiting to hear.
I'm hoping to draw it out and gain that interest from you and the audience and try out some new things. So, as everybody knows, about 3 weeks ago, I left AWS to pursue other opportunities and roles. I absolutely love working with everybody there. And, I just wanted a different challenge for myself. And that doesn't mean I don't like AWS. In fact, I enjoy their services. I enjoy working with them. I still have a lot of friends that I talk to and connect. I have started a new career here at Spot by NetApp.
Wow, awesome. Congrats.
Yes. I get to work with some familiar faces. I've worked with them throughout the entire year and on doing some events, webinars. And when I kind of reached out to them and to talk to them about some of the things, I have some really cool things happening in the next maybe 6 to 8 months that we're working on. So stay tuned for some awesome releases. I'm hoping to, kind of evangelize a lot of the Spot products. I know a lot of them already, so this kind of works out.
Cool. And you get to do some streaming?
I always get to do streaming, so we had a meeting today and we were talking about goals, and everybody has like these, public speaking and workshops. And I raised my hand. I was like, anybody need help with this stuff? You let me know. I'm there with you. And he's like, but they're like, I'm a little shy about it. I said, don't worry. I'll make you shine in the best spotlight that you'll be a natural at it. I said, I've had a great mentor. We'll just get this going and we'll have a lot of fun. And then I'll just jump off and it's all you.
Sounds fun. I'm sure you'll do great at that.
Thank you. Well, if you remember, probably reInvent 2019, was it? Yeah, 2019, when I put the AWS logo in my hair.
I do remember that. You had it kind of shaved in the side of your head, right?
Yes. Actually, I don't have the sticker here, but don't worry. I got this. Jeff, I sent you a couple of those, the stickers. But Spot was my biggest fan. There's a gentleman there, David Deckel, who was like reshared my social media stuff, and I got there. I did pictures with him. And that really cultivated a lot of the conversations. It wasn't about visibility for me, but it was to talk about a very stressful week and have that engagement. I did pictures with anybody and everybody to have a conversation. And it was that was like a springboard to my career for evangelism. And then, obviously we had SKO and then we had lockdown. So if you kind of notice the progression, I guess I naturally gravitated towards being the next like Jeff Barr and evangelizing products and just putting content out there. So
that's great to hear. Wish you all the best success with that.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate it. I look forward to doing more of these with you in the future. Just having this natural sit-down conversation, what we're doing, what we're working on. And stay tuned. I'm actually working on a content on how to redirect your website to another domain using Route 53 and S3. There's a couple of videos out there, but I do it in about 5 minutes, and I do it with my own website. I just put it together. I'm going to share that as well. Like I said, I like AWS's products.
Sounds great.
All right, Jeff, thanks for sitting down with me and doing these recordings. I look forward to the next one we do. Have yourself a good rest of your day. Enjoy it, and I look forward to your next What's New video.
Sounds good. Okay. Great to talk to you, John. Congrats on the new job, and wonderful to catch up with you.
Yes. Thank you, Jeff. Have a good one.
Will do.
Bye.
Bye-bye.